Got it. All right. Well, that's why we have to hang on then.
Yeah.
Sorry, just to give everyone a bit of context for the start of this podcast, I started talking and Lee hadn't even pressed recording yet, so it was just, you'll never get that intro back. It's gone into the abyss, but regardless.
I had to tell him to hang on.
Yeah, hang on. Hang on. With
There's
that
no
extra,
H in it, mate.
that G hangs on every time you say it. Hanger. Anyway, Lee, Raneel, Tim the Cheese, we are back live with the Rugby League Coach podcast here, episode number 22. We had the week off, of course. We didn't do a live show last week. Is everyone feeling refreshed and re-energized from their week off?
I just want to say there's been a couple of people on socials chipping me about my weight, right? It's because I had the puffer jacket on. Look, so I'm going to do a live thing now. Look at this. No problemo. Look at that. Svelte. Look at that. Going well, look.
So you've put on your little looser shirt in your cupboard, and you
no. Look at the shoulders in comparison with the stomach.
What do you mean? It's the same up and down. You're like a 70-year-old redwood.
Fridge.
You're a 70-year-old redwood, mate. You're the same size up and down.
My calves are the same size as my thighs or something, I think. Just slabs.
Oh,
it is what it is.
Oh, plank leg. Same size. Yeah, we've had the week off. Lee, you were traveling throughout the UK. I'll come back to you, but I do want to ask everyone else how they enjoyed their week off. What did you do with your extra time on Wednesday and Thursday night last week, fellas?
I was in hospital all week, mate, so I only got out on Monday.
Was that the thing you were going in for?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, we're hoping you're doing well over there, Tim. A bit of a hospital visit. That's not.
It wasn't rushed in. It was all planned, wasn't it? Lad?
It was all planned.
Yeah.
They get the hair follicles going, did they?
No. Got to get rid of that again.
Raneel,
living crisis, can't shave.
Raneel, next time Tim goes to get some hair follicles on top, can you lend him some of yours, mate? Look at it go. What'd you do with your time off? What'd you do with your time off, Raneel?
Oh, I don't actually remember.
Too drunk.
I mean, there's not much. I mean, I'm a single 27-year-old that lives with his parents, so I don't have a lot going on.
Hey, watch the block.
Did you get pulled over by the police again, Raneel?
No, I didn't have Lee chasing me down that time. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Hey, I want to know that palm tree because it's been there every week. You used to change it up a bit. Is that a palm tree or is it a growth on your shoulder,
mate? This side. It is reminiscent of what I did in my break. No one asked me, but I took my son camping to Morton Island.
Oh,
saw that.
Bit of father-son time. Unfortunately, it was a lot windier than that and a lot more rain came as well.
I was in England and it was persisting down. I got to Vegas and it was persisting down.
Oh, geez. But yeah, you expect it in the Northern Hemisphere.
Even in Singapore, when I stopped there, there'd been precipitation.
Jeez, wet all up and down the world, mate. Crazy. Yeah. But Lee, we're back to you. You had your 2 weeks in England.
Yeah, James just texted and said his bus is running late. Because he's the driver. Let's rip him when he comes on.
Well,
why are you complaining about the bus being late when you're driving
it? Can you imagine he's still got one more stop to get on the bloody bus?
Please.
Have you heard of the Rugby League Coach podcast?
Oh.
Can you imagine him driving the bus and he's just got it on repeat and someone gets on? That's me. That's me over there. Anyway, sorry. So he shouldn't be texting while he's driving. That's but anyway, right. we hope he gets.
He stopped. He's a bus driver.
Yeah. Sorry, passengers. We're just stopping here for a break. Technical issues.
Well, I'm glad we've got Lee smiling and happy because I'm gonna ask him about the jet lag. I'm gonna ask him about his trip to the Northern Hemisphere. And there's been a little bit of a fire that I've seen in Lee's eyes through social media over the last couple of days. And I want to talk to him. First of all, I hope you enjoy the trip back home. Saw you spend some time with your old man and all that sort of stuff, mate, it's always good to see. But then, of course, in the mother country at the moment, the World Cup. You got to see it firsthand. You had eyes on. We've spoken previously about things like, attendances at the World Cup. It looked a bit shaky. I'm going to ask you straight off, mate, the Northern Hemisphere teams, your Scotlands, your Irelands, things like that. Being a proud Great Britain man yourself. What have you made of the performances we've seen out of those organisations in this World Cup?
First of all, I'm not going to criticise the players or the coaches. They're there and that's it. I'm criticising the system. I'm criticising the administration. I'm criticising the people. I'm not even criticising the volunteers in these areas. The reason I'm so passionate about this, Taylor, is that I grew up over there, as you know. Always wanted to see British Rugby League develop to a point where it can compete with its Antipodean counterparts regularly. And because, in my lifetime, Great Britain have never beaten Australia in a Test series or a World Cup series, or England. So that's only half a century that they've not done it for, right? So it's been a big passion of mine. And another reason why I'm so fired up about it is that when I left the UK, sort of mid-2000s-ish, it seemed like things were really heading in the right direction. I had mates who were playing and coaching, administrating in Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, played against them, coached against them, broke bread with them, drank beer with them, everything. So I'm talking about people and things that I care about. I hinted prior to the World Cup actually starting that this could be something of a day of reckoning for the Northern Hemisphere in terms of rugby league. And I've compared it, and I hinted at it before the competition, to the 1982 Invincibles tour. Before you were born, I think, Taylor, and definitely before you were born, Raneel. But what happened is the Kangaroos came over to Britain, and it shocked everybody, the differences in standard. So in 1978, for example, Britain had won a test. I think in 1980 or 79 in Australia, they'd won a test. But in 82, the differences were huge. And the Invincibles went through, there were some to be called the Invincibles, went through undefeated. They were fitter, they were stronger, they were more skilled. It was like they were from a different planet. And on the back of that, a big review started going through the British game, and we got some headway in the 90s and a little bit later into that decade too. To the mid part of the decade anyway, under Mal Riley, and then another 10 years, David Waite, and this and the other. So I'm comparing this period now to 1982. I think, and I've got some results now to support it. And if you want, I can sort of list them.
I'd love you to, absolutely.
Okay. I'm paraphrasing one of my social media posts as well. So if people haven't seen it, that's good. If they have seen it, then hopefully I'm going to add a bit more flavour to what I wrote anyway. Current World Cup results that support the Northern Hemisphere Day of Reckoning theory, and there's 11 of them. Wales 12, Cook Islands 18, Australia 84, Scotland 0, Fiji 60, Italy 4, New Zealand 68, Jamaica 6, but I put a little asterisk next to Jamaica, and I'll tell you why later. Samoa 72, Greece 4, again another asterisk next to Greece. Tonga 32, Wales 6, the game that I was at. New Zealand 48, Ireland 10, Fiji 30, Scotland 14, Australia 66, Italy 6, Samoa 62, France 4, PNG 36, Wales 0. I argue that the Jamaica and Greece results are asterisks because it's their first World Cup, and so, for example, Greece, the game was illegal there not that long ago, so I reckon it's a little bit of it's a bit wrong of me to put them in there, but I had to for the clarity of the list. Current World Cups that challenge this Northern Hemisphere Day of Reckoning theory. 1. So we've got 11 results that are in favour of the Southern Hemisphere teams, and we've got 1 result that goes against it. England 60, Samoa 6, when I think by all accounts Samoa well undercooked. James, we were ripping into you a bit ago, so just put it on mute because we're ripping into you. I'll tell you why when I finish. I'm in the middle of a rant. Now, if you peel back those results, like I was at the Wales and Tonga game, it was Tonga reserves.
Yeah.
The best players were on the bench. Jason Tamalolo was still suspended. William Hopewati was still injured. And somebody else I've forgotten. So they're not even the strongest side. Put the strongest side out, and they're still flogging these teams. If you take England out of the equation, Northern Hemisphere teams have lost 100% of the 11 matches against Southern Hemisphere opposition at this World Cup. A combined average score of 52-6.
Wow.
I think that is disgusting.
52-6 as a combined. Yeah. That's
yeah. I've took England out of the equation, and I'll explain that if you want me to later. But yeah,
Yeah, it's quite a stark sort of reality at the moment that's happening over there in the Northern Hemisphere. Why do you think we're seeing results like we're seeing at the moment, Lee? I know you mentioned you're taking aim at the administrators and you're taking aim at those sort of people's in the positions that can change things. I'm asking you now, what's happened? What's changed? You mentioned that there was some very tight series, and as mid 2000s did seem, I distinctly remember watching some very, very tight Great British Lions against the Australian team tests. I know that's the combination, but there's not many sides. There's not many blokes in the Scottish and the Wales teams that would even look apart. You know, or the Irish team that would look close to being in that English side at the moment. So what's I know Greece you've mentioned, but Scotland, Ireland, Wales, France in particular, quite disappointing. I mean, the French, they have a Super League side, and traditionally they aren't too bad in the World Cups. When you've got a Lebanese side through to the quarterfinals, it sort of says a lot, doesn't it?
Well, Gavin Willisey in The Guardian made a good point. He said that French team is basically made up of Super League players, yet they got absolutely smashed off Samoa. Ireland Super League stars failed to cope with Lebanon, which has got mostly New South Wales Cup players. And Scotland melted against Australia. And they're mainly products of Super League and England's play development system, and they've fallen miles behind those in the NRL. So you asked me what happened. Look, in the early 90s, mate, in Britain, rugby league was the second biggest spectator sport. Right? Also, rugby union wasn't professional, officially, in inverted commas. Right? Yeah. So the Great Britain team, the Welsh team, was full of union converts, or had a lot of union converts, sorry. So, again, I don't know how far back your memory goes, but James will certainly jump all over this. Jonathan Davis, Paul Moriarty in the Wales team, Martin Afire in the British and England team. There's more. I'm just having a bit of brain fog at the minute, but there was a lot. John Devereux was a union convert. And they were all, some of the legends of rugby league in years gone by have been union converts. So the rugby union game went openly professional around about that time. Exactly the same time, or more or less in the same era, we had a Super League war, mate. And it tore the game to shreds. Now, what has basically happened since, let's call it 1995, just to make things simple, or 1992 to 1995. What's basically happened in those 30 years is, instead of rugby league in those countries pivoting and going, right, well, we can't rely on these union converts anymore to get us out of trouble short term. What we now need to do is put some long-term development strategies in place. So to give you some idea, Wales were semi-finalists in the 1995 World Cup. Italy and Scotland were in the Emerging Nations World Cup. Anybody who was 10 years old in that tournament, watching that tournament, the Emerging Nations or the semis, could now have played in 4 World Cups, right? And retired at about the age of 32 after this one. If a proper development system was put in place in those countries, and I don't think it needs to cost millions and millions of dollars, pounds, sorry, too. So what's basically happened is, as the union converts became less and less common in those areas, the shortfall hasn't been covered. So the year 2000 was actually our last great hurrah as a Northern Hemisphere group of countries. I've got to start somewhere. I'm just looking for it now. I don't think the Northern Hemisphere teams have won a knockout game since 2000?
Jeez.
Ireland got to the quarters in 2008 because I was involved with them. But they didn't win it. And Scotland got to those same quarters. So they've not won a knockout game in the World Cup for over 2 decades. So this isn't just like a new thing that's a shock.
No, yeah.
Now, the other thing, mate, around about 2003, there was a European Federation formed. What have they been doing to develop the game?
Yeah. I didn't even know there was a European Federation.
There is. And look, again, I know some people involved with them. I'm not having a pop at them. But where is the accountability for any of this? Who was in charge of getting these nations up to scratch? Because that's the problem. They all duck and dive Who was in charge of getting these nations up to scratch? Who is being held accountable for it? If there was any other walk of life, they'd be punted. In the last two World Cups, 2017 and now this one, not one Northern Hemisphere team has beaten a Southern Hemisphere team if you take out England and from the previous World Cup USA. I take them out because there was a lot of Southern Hemisphere players in that team.
Yeah.
Where's the harsh review? Where's the accountability? And what we do in rugby league is people just jockey and save their own job, blame somebody else. There's never any accountability for anybody. Nobody sits down and say, you've not produced this result. What are you going to do about it in 3 months? If you don't produce it in 3 months, you're gone. And I don't know any successful enterprise that doesn't have something like that in place for its employees. I am absolutely filthy. And anybody involved in Scottish, Welsh, Irish rugby league should be filthy. You know, Italy are part of that Northern Hemisphere group, but, you know, they've actually developed a player that featured in the World Cup this time. He played for 14 minutes. That's 14 minutes and a load of others that have been doing it for 30 years. It's an absolute disgrace, mate. It's, you know, they hold the torch for us league fans, us league fans who care. All those volunteers that go out in Scotland and Wales and Ireland and whatever other country you want to throw in there, and they need help, and they've needed help for 20 years. Like I said, when I left England, I thought we were moving in the right direction. There was people from all over the country playing the game, and they were playing it in clubs all over the country. And somewhere along the line, we've lost that. And I'm filthy, mate. I'm absolutely filthy. You can probably tell. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. And rugby league's got form with this too. Like, it's, you know, even in Australia, mate. Melbourne don't produce Victorian rugby league players at the same rate that Sydney Swans produce New South Welsh AFL players. AFL have proven to us that a good development system with long-term athlete development in mind can produce players and can produce winners.
Yes.
It's criminal. It is absolutely criminal.
So, James, you're obviously a man from the north. Thank you for joining us after your bus route. We hope that you and whoever you were
just ripping you, mate,
safely
while you weren't here. So just because we're not talking behind your back, you said you complaining about the bus was late. You're driving the bloody thing.
I was driving.
How can you complain about the bus being late? Everyone complains about the buses. You're driving it.
I got delayed in Leeds City Centre. I'll put it that way. So yeah, okay. I've been to. I've got a bit of an outside broadcast this morning. I'm doing a bit of an outside broadcast this morning as well. I'm sat in Wetherby, if you know that, but West Yorkshire. Yeah. But no,
you're making it sound like it's a war zone.
Yeah, it's not really. If there's a bit of some background noise, I'm sat by a river actually.
Oh, you're all right.
Can you hear some background? Is it okay? Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Go into the. Well, there's two points I want to bring up here. The Super League, there was all the controversy last year with the Rugby League talking about cutting academies. Did you hear about all that?
Yep.
Bradford and which is money should be put into academies at the end of the day to get players or give young players something to strive for and clubs to play for. That's what they need to do. But also going back to that Wales team, Iestyn Harris as well. Of course, Lee Breer's in the in that, but like with Widnes in the early 90s, for instance, were signing rugby union players like there were no tomorrow, and they were filling that way.
And you know what, Jimbo, those rugby union players are still available. You've just got to get them younger before they follow a career in rugby league. You've got to have scouting networks covering all the areas, rather than having scouts that just go to the ground down the road. just near the M62. They need to start getting volunteers to go and look in these areas or talk to people on the phone, on Facebook, whatever. Find out who the best kids are.
Exactly.
And make them love rugby league.
Yeah. Well, Herbie Farnworth is from a village near Burnley, basically. And there must have been a Brisbane Broncos scout over here, or there must have been some kind of link watching Herbie Farnworth.
Now,
and get to go
his
to
uncle. His uncle is my friend Brian Foley, who's at Wigan.
Oh, is it all right?
He's a development officer, so he's got contacts. Let's just put it like that. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. How that happened? Yeah.
Well, it still happens today. Cameron Murray, Angus Crichton, they all came over from rugby union in Sydney.
Yeah.
I believe Toby Rudolph might have been one of those players as well that come over from rugby union. I mean, it still happens.
KP did the same.
Lots of the Kiwis spent a lot of time in rugby union before converting. I think you'll notice that, Lee, that a lot of the good New Zealand players spend a lot of time in rugby union. And you ask the majority of them, they say as soon as they play rugby league, they fall in love.
When you're running an operation, so businesses during COVID had to change what they did because COVID changed certain things. So. Uber Eats grew, Zoom grew, etc., etc. Companies pivoted. Rugby league in the UK had to pivot once the game went professional, because it went professional over here in Australia too, and it went professional over in New Zealand too. And I'm pretty convinced if you played the Kangaroos against the Wallabies, I know what the result would be in either sport, I reckon. Kiwis versus All Blacks would be a bit different, but ultimately...
Depends which team with the All Blacks. The current one, not so much.
But, either way, I mean, there's strength everywhere. The scary thing about this, I don't even think the NRL and the Australian teams are as strong as they used to be.
No.
I think we're talking about an overall drop in standard. And that makes it even scarier. Now, I keep picking on Paul Wales. This is what I'm saying about I'm not criticising players and coaches. They had a right crack, right? The problem is those Wales players have come through a system that never prepared them for this day. And that's why they're not good enough. And they had a must-win game against PNG, winner takes all, and they got flogged. And then they played Tonga's reserve side, basically, and Tonga looked awful for 25, 30 minutes. I was there. And I know for a fact that the coach gave it to him after the game. And they still won by 30 points.
Well, I spoke to you, Lee. I think, I don't necessarily believe that the Australian side is getting weaker. I just think that it certainly seems that way. People are thinking that. I don't think the players are... I don't think they're weaker. I think they're just as strong. They're faster. They're more skillful, all that sort of thing. I just don't necessarily think they've got enough around them. Like, they're not coming up against sides that's bringing the best out of them. I think if you see Australia play New Zealand in a final, I think that will be an absolute cracking game of football.
Well, I can't play them in the final because the draw's been fixed to make sure that they meet each other in the semis so that England have a better chance of getting through.
Yeah, that's right. So, but even Australia versus New Zealand, whenever it comes up, or Australia versus England, or it's going to look a lot better than what we're seeing at the moment. Yeah. I don't necessarily think of this drop in Australian footies there. It's just more who they're coming up against. You know yourself. If you have good competition, it pushes you to a new level. You look even better. I'm thinking, for me, one of the biggest disappointments about this World Cup's, it's been the scheduling. The scheduling for me has really...
Well, I'm ready to rip in about that too.
It's made it. Well, I am absolutely ready to receive what you're saying. I think that...
Let Raneel talk.
If you are... Well, Raneel might be able to say that he's watched a fair bit more than me because he's a young 27-year-old lad that's living at home. And maybe he's got up a bit early to watch it. But, mate, I've got 2 kids. I work full-time.
Yeah.
How is it expected that I would get up at 4 a.m. or something to watch these games in what, let's be honest, this part of the world, Australia, New Zealand, and if you want to extend it into Samoa and Tonga, this is where all the rugby league is watched. Papua New Guinea, all the rugby
league. You might watch it if you thought it was going to be a contest.
But I know it's not going to be a contest, and I know it's on at 4 a.m. in the morning. So why would I be doing that? Why would I be getting up to watch it live anyway?
Yeah.
I think the scheduling's been terrible. Why do we have to have the Rugby League World Cup in England every single time?
We're not. We don't. The last one was in America. Australia.
Next one's in France, isn't it?
Yeah, it was too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a moot point.
Yeah. You don't know what you're talking about, Taylor.
No, I had it in my head.
I think it'd be a lot easier and a lot better if you didn't have certain games during the week and more on the weekend so that everyone got to watch these games, whether you got up early and you thought it was going to be a contest or not. But if you've got games that are on the weekend that it looked like there was maybe 5,000 or 6,000 people in the stands, and they're on the weekend on a Saturday.
I'm ready.
And then you've got teams like Australia playing on a weekday. Wouldn't you try and have like back-to-back games so that you're getting people to the game, you're getting people to watch the game. That way, the game develops. The game brings kids in.
Yeah,
gives them something to. Yeah, it gives them something to look forward to. Now, I've watched nearly every single game, and the support from Tonga, Samoa, Lebanon has been fantastic. And PNG, their support in the crowds has been fantastic. What happens if you put two of those games together? Then you've got twice as many people there supporting their country that they love and a game that they love.
Yeah.
Instead of having one game on a Thursday night, one game on a Friday night, one game on a Saturday, and one game on a Sunday, why not put them? Two on a Friday night and two on a Saturday.
Yeah.
You'd get more people going there. It'd be more of a spectacle. You'd bring the fans in. The England Rugby League would, and the UK's governing body would make more money because you're getting more people through the gates instead of hiring a stadium that you're only going to have 3,000-4,000 people there.
Have you noticed how pumped up he is? And I wouldn't say he's got the emotional investment in the British game that I have, yet he's a rugby league fan and he's on the other side of the world.
Yeah, frustrated.
Yeah.
Very frustrated.
Raneel's just happy that Fiji is still in it.
Raneel's been on mute this whole time. He's been singing that Fijian song in the background the whole time.
I didn't actually notice.
Just waiting for us to bring up the Fijian national side.
That's all that matters, really, doesn't it?
Have you watched much of it? Raneel?
Honestly, not really. I mean, I think I agree with you guys with the scheduling. But, I mean, every World Cup, I have the same feeling. And I just feel like this sport, like rugby league, doesn't feel like it's a sport that at the moment is capable of having a World Cup. I think everything that that Lee said, I think those are the things that you have to have in terms of systems built in before you can, have like a world stage competition. Like there has to be some alternatives to an international competition for this code. Because I feel like the blow up scores, last round, it's kind of embarrassing as a rugby league fan.
Well, Raneel, we are going to move on to that subject a little bit later, but for now, I want to hear Lee's rant about scheduling. I don't want to miss it. I want to hear it.
First of all, caveat: the guy running the show, John Dutton, I really like him. Like I like the cut of his jib. I've had a little bit of a conversation with him on Messenger. Very polite. I know he's been working tirelessly with his team. I know that they lost 60% of their team last year with the tournament being rescheduled. So there was a couple of mates of mine who were on that team and aren't there anymore because they had to get new jobs or whatever. So I want to start by saying there's so many good things that this World Cup group and committee have done. So there's a massive legacy program structure, right? So I'm not going to list everything I know about, but I do believe a lot of the grounds that were chosen, a lot of the presentations from the grounds to say we want this World Cup match, a lot of it was about legacy, about what carries on. So I do know, for example, I was working at Portico Vine Panthers the other week, and there's Rugby League World Cup legacy projects been happening there because they get these games in St. Helens, right? So including the clubhouse, the new clubhouse and things like that. So that's fantastic. The administration that John Dutton has led, they've been very busy. They've been proactive. There's people who like to complain in the UK. They said there's no posters around. You know what? I saw loads driving around. Loads of them. Problem was, it said World Cup 2021. And it's not like soccer where everybody knows why it says 21 and not 2022, because soccer has a cut through. Rugby league doesn't. So I reckon there was some people driving around and thought, oh, who won that World Cup? It must be over.
Yeah.
You know? So now the other great thing they did, and I'm sure there's other great things that I've not listed, but every game is on terrestrial TV in England, free to air, either through the BBC, so either on a proper linear TV channel or Freeview. That is absolutely huge in England, isn't it, James? Like, that's not common for rugby league. So that's really good. So if you can imagine every single game being on Channel 7 or Channel 9 over here, Taylor,
yes,
for a niche sport, because don't forget, rugby league isn't like it is in Australia. Rugby league's a small sport in comparison. So that's huge. So kudos to the World Cup committee there. They also had great crowds in Newcastle for the England-Samoa game and Bolton for the England-France game. I was like, why are they playing it in Bolton when they can play it in Wigan or Saints? But, you know, they've done well. So it's not like they're a completely useless mob who haven't brought anything to the table, right? Now, I do think sometimes people look at things in such depth and with high intellect that they actually miss what's right in front of them sometimes, right? And I would have thought that a World Cup that is really integral to the future of the sport, to the financial health of the game over there, go where the fish are biting. Go play your games, as many games as possible at Wigan, Leeds, Dewsbury, Bartlett, anywhere around the M62 corridor, as much as you can. Middlesbrough. Tonga played somebody the other day at Middlesbrough. I don't know anybody in rugby league who's ever been to Middlesbrough.
Exactly.
Like, honestly, it's like playing... I mean, the geography is completely different, but it's like playing a rugby league game at some random town in Victoria, Taylor.
Mm.
You know, like, it's weird. They played an England international.
Isn't it getting worse with the Women's Rugby League? They've actually had to move stadiums because of the Rugby Union World Cup, and they have preference over what stadiums they go to. So
in England or here?
Yeah, in England.
Okay.
The women's game, they've had to actually move a couple of games.
Let me keep going, because I've got some other things that will link to that. The third England game against Greece was played at Bramall Lane in Sheffield.
Yeah.
Now, again, Sheffield Eagles are a team that used to be great, but probably get a few hundred people watching them now. And it's a bit out off the beaten track. The other thing, right, and I keep talking to the Aussies in this group. England's a small island, and a lot of the rugby league grounds aren't that far away from each other, right? So if you play 3 games on a Saturday, and one of them is at Leigh Sports Village, you'll have seen that name pop up a few times, and one of them is at Warrington, and one of them's at St Helens or Wigan or whatever, and there's just enough time between each, fans would probably go to all 3 because they can physically get there, right? Or they'd at least go to 2 of them, right? If with some smart ticketing. You don't even need to do double headers or triple headers in that sense. You could, but that's another thing that I totally agree with Tim about. Instead, there's been games at Leigh and then a game in What? Like, you know, rugby league fans, particularly in England, if you know your demographic, they just love rugby league. So they'd go anywhere to watch it, kind of thing. Scotland played a game at the same time that Scottish Rugby Union played a test match. England played a game at exactly the same time that Manchester United were playing Chelsea in the 5:30 Saturday night slot. Now, I do know once you play around with this, there's you know, you can keep wiggling, and the next thing you'll be playing Tuesday at midnight. But I'll just use that England one. If they'd have played at 7:30, they'd have had a clear run, and the eyeballs would have gone from Chelsea. You know,
someone might have stuck around and watched.
That's it. I know, because I was in a pub with my family, and because I don't support United, I watched England and France. And instead, the New Zealand and whoever game was on at 7:30. Why not switch that round? It just doesn't make... the draw. Obviously, there's some wisdom after the event here, but traditionally what has happened quite a lot is a lot of the Southern Hemisphere teams have been in the same pools, and a lot of the Northern Hemisphere teams have been in the same pools. So therefore, their games are quite close, and then when they meet each other in quarters and semis, then you find out where they're at. So that's one way around that. Another way is having two pools where three people come up from the four, and you throw in Australia, New Zealand, Samoa, Tonga, blah, 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 all the good teams. And then the other two pools, one team comes up. Rugby League's done stuff like that before. Whatever it is, they've got to stick with this 16-team format now. They've got to stick with 16 teams because they need people everywhere in the world to dream of playing in that World Cup. There's a fella on my social media who suggested, Carl Stevenson, his name, talked about, I think he was forwarding something from someone else, but talked about a plate competition for the bottom two in each group. And I promised him that I'd bring that up with the forum here.
I don't mind the idea. I think what Raneel said is very true with the score lines, the way they are. It makes it a bit of a sad look for the game, doesn't it? When all of the score lines have basically been blowouts across.
If this is a cross section of society, this podcast, right? There's me who's a leaguey through and through. You're a leaguey through and through, Taylor, but you're a bit more Australian centric and Queensland State League centric in your thought processes, right?
Good looking, yes.
Tim loves rugby league if it was played in Timbuktu or whatever. He just loves rugby league. He's obsessed with it. And James is pretty much the same. Raneel, I would say, is a bit more in the floating voter category in that he does love rugby league, but I wouldn't say you're obsessed with it, Raneel. Is that fair? Like, you're not waking up in the morning thinking, what's my next rugby league project for the day? Whereas I do honestly think myself, Taylor, Tim, and James, if it's not the first thought, it's definitely the second.
Oh, I'd agree with that one.
I agree.
Yeah. So, and what was key in what you said, Raneel? You were just like, you basically said it was rubbish. You said it was rubbish entertainment because you're effectively a consumer. You are typical of so many consumers. If you were to be pressed against the wall, what's your favourite sport? You'd probably fall rugby league. But you know what? You don't have to be pressed against the wall. You're a consumer. You can choose what you want.
Yeah.
For Taylor, for Tim, for James, it's in our DNA. It's not in your DNA as such. You know what I'm saying? So your points that you made are actually the most important points here in this forum.
Yep.
Because they're the people that we're trying to attract. Us three, four, however many of them, I can't see, I'm jet lagged. Us four, we're converted.
Yeah.
They've got us.
The choir.
Do you know what I mean? Is that fair, Raneel, or have I made you sound like you don't care?
No, I think you summed it up perfectly. I think the difference is you guys have obviously been either players or coaches or, dedicated fans.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, I think I'm just of course I'm a fan and I'm passionate about it, but I think I'm just a spectator at the end of the day,
So you could easily just change the channel.
Yeah, 100%.
Well,
yeah. I mean,
I'm telling you now, right? I'm telling you now, this weekend, Man City play Fulham, cut me in half on Sky Blue, Man City, and England play Papua New Guinea. If that Papua New Guinea game starts to blow out in England's favour, I'll probably spend more time watching Man City. And I'm a converted league fan.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's the blowout scores. I don't know what the format would look like to change. I agree, Lee. You need to keep the 16 teams now that we have 16 teams. I don't want to see that number go down at all. We're a far cry from expansion on that number. So 16 is a number, lock that in. I don't know how it would look in terms of trying to make it look a bit more competitive on the early stages. It is very hard as a leaguey myself, and I'm the exact same with the NRL season. If I'm sitting there on a Friday night or a Saturday night and I've got a game going and it starts to blow out a bit, I go, I don't even follow teams as much anymore. I just follow rugby league. If it's a really good game of rugby league, I get really invested in it. I couldn't care what colour.
We want to see Jeopardy, don't we?
I do. I don't care what colours they've got on. I don't care where they're from. I could not care less. I just want to see, and I could watch an under 6 game of football that's really tight and just sit there with my eyes glued to it. That it's the contest that really gets me in, because it draws out the best in the players, and I think it draws out the best in everyone, those tight contests. So that's what gets me in. We need to do something about the standard differentials in these early matches. We need to do something. Do Italy get something out of being absolutely smoked by the Kangaroos? Do they get anything other than the memory? Does it really help their football to do that?
I think the shortcut is just those Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere pools, mate. And, that would still have cut through to the general population. They'd think, well, at least in the semi-finals or the quarter-finals, the best teams from the Northern Hemisphere will be playing the best teams from the Southern Hemisphere. That's only like the NFL with their different conferences and... there's nothing wrong with that. So I reckon that's probably not a bad way to go. The only problem is England will flog everyone. You see, when I'm talking about Northern Hemisphere, the other thing we should probably talk about is the England team. Can the England team win it, mate? Personally, I don't think so.
No.
But I do think they're doing... they're giving themselves an absolutely great account of themselves at the minute. Like, I think they're doing really well. I really do.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to see how the quarters step up the game. The Tonga versus Samoa. There's a few games that are going to be really good games of football coming up in the next couple of days / week, and I'm really looking to see. Now it's starting to heat up how this competition starts faring.
I think if England get knocked out and beaten quite well by Tonga or Samoa in the semi-final, for example, I'm letting them get through through PNG. But if Tonga or Samoa roll them, I think it's game, set, and match for my Northern Hemisphere Rugby League Day of Reckoning theory. Likewise, if they get to a final and it is one-sided, game, set, and match. But England, Great Britain, they only need 17 players to win the World Cup at the end of the day. So.
Although, tell you what, if you did a Northern Hemisphere and a Southern Hemisphere in the pool, you could also fix the scheduling to have more of those countries available to watch it at their time slot.
Thinking.
So you could have your Samoa versus Tonga play each other at a suitable time for the home countries. You could have Australia play New Zealand at a suitable time for the home countries. Yeah. You could also then still have Scotland v Wales in a suitable time for where they're from. You could have Italy versus Greece, all those sort of things. Yeah. I'd like to see. It's just so hard because you still have to qualify for it. You still have to qualify for the World Cup.
Yeah. But there's a good 2-year clearance to prepare for all that. And they had an extra year this year too.
I'd like to see a little bit more rivalries come through.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be good to see, Italy and Greece start a really healthy rivalry against each other? Two very proud nations that are very close to it, just have that really strong rivalry. Wouldn't it be good to have Scotland and Wales and Ireland play against each other in a really fierce rivalry? And as you know, fierce competition will bring out the best in everyone when they are tested to their true mettle. And I think that's what you've got to do. You've got to have these tournaments in and around the Rugby League World Cup, or make sure the scheduling works to have them play against each other.
Agreed.
Because that mate versus mate stuff works. Look at Origin.
I honestly think what's happened with this World Cup is that the people involved are really intelligent people. I don't think we're dealing with buffheads here, right? And I praise them so much for the good things they've done. But like I said, sometimes you're too busy looking at things up there that you miss what's right in front of you. The things that you're talking about and some of the venue choices to really maximise crowds, because it's massive. It is massive. If you're watching a game that's one-sided and there's more empty seats than there is people at the ground, that is so bad for optics, so bad for our game. I read something the other day, and I don't know if it's a credible source, but something like 2 of the games have only been over 50% capacity filled. So most stadiums have been under 50% of their capacity filled. I think they've possibly had a strategy where there's 2 ways to get £1,000. One is to have 10 people pay £100. Another way is to have 100 people paying £10. And I think they've gone for the former rather than the latter, which has been a tough strategy in such tough times for the world. Mate, we've covered loads at the minute, and we normally do about an hour and 20, and we've done 50 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
I'm going all right.
Yeah, we are going all right.
Pod today.
Go on, Tim.
How would it go with having our international rounds. Like we've spoken about Tonga, Samoa, and PNG and Fiji and all that sort of stuff in the Southern Hemisphere. Those guys playing each other around our rep rounds.
Mm-hmm. We did do that a bit, didn't we?
Yeah, I cannot think of any sort of game that's been televised, like Wales and Ireland and France and Italy and Scotland and Greece and those sort of things. If those teams play on a much
more regular basis.
Me
and Tim are soulmates. I finish your sentences.
The quality of football is going to improve.
That's right. Because more people think, I want to be on telly playing in that.
That's it. And you're going to have those rivalries start.
Not rocket science, lad. Particularly in this day of streaming, you get something on KO, the amount of eyeballs that get on it.
That's what I mean. I can't think of seeing any sort of teams play.
Yeah.
And
but they do it mostly behind closed doors.
Could you lean into a few of these countries that do union? Could you lean, like, Italy does union, Greece, they do not as well do union. French, obviously, a big union components. Could you do like a World Cup nines or, a shorter format over one weekend or something to build a bit of interest other than just once every 3 years?
The worst thing, the International Federation still haven't worked out the calendar yet for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
Again. Now, they all like to go on the trips and nice flights or whatever. How about doing a bit more work? And why have we not got a calendar? Why do we not know right now when Wales are playing again? Wales are out of the tournament. Why don't we know when they're playing again? Why don't we know when Greece are playing again? They're out. Jamaica. Why? They said we might have a calendar in December. Why? And I'm not just blaming the federation. I'm blaming everybody involved in the decision-making of the game.
Yeah.
Because I reckon it'd be good to see those bottom teams having another game. Like, yes, they were blowout. They were massive blowouts. But you put those two bottom teams on the bottoms of every pool. There's another couple of games that you're going to get people come and see and watch, but it gives them something to look forward to, not just to get absolutely annihilated by.
Or you'd cop your annihilations and then just go, don't worry, boys, we're here to win the plate. Like,
that's it.
I understand all that. I guess playing devil's advocate, the cost of it might outweigh what comes back. So don't forget, every team's got to stay in hotels, get shipped around, blah, 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 blah. If the crowds don't come in, if the TV company don't cover it, it's in a bit of trouble. Number two, when you're away for a World Cup, and I've done this a couple of times, like, particularly if you're not getting paid, some problems can kick in your personal life if you're away for longer than 3 weeks. Like, I remember being away with the USA in 2013, and we were only meant to be away for 3.5 weeks. They hadn't even booked us a hotel. And we ended up winning through to the quarters, and all my bills were going red, and I wasn't getting paid from work, and this, that, and the other. These are real life problems. So, I've got to be honest. Even though it was a great trip, I was ready to come home about a week before coming home. So, yeah.
But Lee, would you like to see something formally put into place? Certainly, I would, for the emerging nations or for these sort of teams. Something put into place midway through. It doesn't have to be every 4 years or every 3 years or whatnot that we see these sides compete, like an emerging nations or a tri-nations between certain teams, or a four nations or a nines World Cup tournament.
Hey, I coached Poland in an emerging nations World Cup. We won the trophy. Guess what Poland have done since then? Both because of things that may have happened in Poland or whatever, but there's been no leadership from the game. Is James on his bus there? Has he got in his bus?
What I can do, Lee, I can stop on a bit longer because I don't actually set off till 22, so I can stop on for a bit longer next fall.
Good to see our buses are in great hands.
Well, yeah.
Public transport in the UK is thriving.
And tickets, please.
Tickets, please. Ching, ching.
And you want to know why the bus was late? The bloke before you probably does a finance podcast.
Hey, mate, get up and let this old lady sit in that chair. Show some respect.
So so I can stop them for about another good 10, 15 minutes, Lee.
Yeah, just tell Taylor to shut up so you can have a word in edgeways.
Next time you're driving one of those bus and Lee's over there, mate, do me a favour, flatten him.
Run me over, yeah.
Flatten him.
Mate, the bus would finish second.
Even with you, Lee, I heard you got a habit of finishing second. Anyway,
I heard you always come first.
Mate, I'm finished before the race started.
Yeah,
he'd be on the way out of the depot, and I'd still be in front of the bus.
That's right.
Oh,
there we go. Geez. There we go.
So, do you want to steer it? You've sent me a message here, Lee, about a training week in the gym.
Yeah, just a bit of a change of topic, just for people, because I'll cut this out and I'll put it on socials for everyone. So, I've had a fella on Instagram goes by the name of JF. That'll do. Hey man, which training split would be more optimal for rugby league training? Monday, chest and tries plus speed agility. Tuesday, shoulders and buys plus kicking session. Wednesday, legs. Thursday, back. Friday, power and strength and fitness. Saturday, Sunday, rest. Or Monday, upper body and conditioning. Tuesday, lower body. Wednesday, rest. Thursday, upper body and speed agility. Friday, kicking session. Saturday, conditioning. Sunday, rest. So I said, mate, there's loads I can say about this. I'd love to do it in reply to a video that everyone can see on socials. And I know James will lap this up too, and Tim would probably lap this up too. So, number one, I really like this guy. He's thinking about training, right? He's obviously thinking a lot deeper than most people do. So, JF, whatever your real name is, well done. I really appreciate that. There's a few questions that I've got to come in. Number one, what level are you coaching at or training at? Number two, what's the caliber of your players? I know that there's some players, if they did this, they'd be dead after 3 weeks of it. So we need a bit more coverage around that. Number three, what's the phase of the year? Is it pre-season, off-season, in-season, 4 weeks out from the season, blah, 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 blah. So there's all the questions. So there's more layers that we need to add. But the big one, number three, what I would do straight away is, you know that he gave us a couple of lists. One of them had a rest day in between, but they trained on a Saturday and this, that, and the other. Look, I think there's some firm bases to work to for most players who play at a certain level all around the world. Train no more than 5 times a week. 4 if you can. Would you agree with that, Taylor?
Yeah.
Number two. Hang on, hold that thought. We'll go back to it. Number two, your weights. Personally, this chest and tries and shoulders and buys and all this, you're not a bodybuilder. You're not coaching them to have fantastic bodies in a gym. Training in the gym is a means to an end for rugby league. So your weights have to be functional. They have to be game related. When you've done the functional and game related things, then maybe you can add on a little bit of bodybuilding, a bit on the chest here, a bit on the back. You know what lads are like. They want to put more on the chest. And I would say no more than 2 gym sessions a week. So personally, I would train for 4 times a week, 2 gym with a lot of coring, 2 field. Now, the other thing is he's mentioned speed and agility. Now, if you're teaching and coaching speed and agility, if you're doing that at the same time as you're doing conditioning, you're actually getting less benefit out of all the things. So you've got to look at what you're trying to do. You're trying to condition your athletes with endurance, condition them aerobically, anaerobically, whatever, or you're trying to condition them to be purely anaerobic and powerful. So there's so many caveats in there. So I guess I want to use this part to stimulate the conversation between coaches on socials, but also here, that you've got to periodize your training. You can't just sit there and go, right, this is what we're going to do everything in 1 week. You've got to have a goal for your training, and during that phase, what's the goal? What's the time of the year? And you've got to incrementally build towards it. And yes, I have done seminars and webinars on that. So if you're interested, reach out. Thank you.
So, yeah, I think what you said there, Lee, is very important. It's about what you are trying to get out of it. If you're at the start of preseason, the speed, agility, those sorts of things, they wouldn't be as important at that time. You might do a block where you're putting lots of volume in the legs. People put, volume in the legs and they think, oh, it's because we're trying to get you really fit. It's actually more you're helping your legs, your joints, your knees, your ankles, all those sorts of things. There is lots of scientific studies to say the more kilometers you put into your legs at the start of that time period, the less injuries you get, because you are training all those ligaments and muscles to deal with all of that loading. So during that period of time, you might be trying to to also put some size on your lads because it's preseason. You might be doing hypertrophy in the gym. You might be trying to do sort of, lots of repetitions on your weight, lots of sets because you're trying to build the muscle. Then when you get into the season, you find that these things they'll all work together. You'll then do speed and agility whilst in the gym for those 2 sessions. Now you're trying power, short, sharp movements, lots of, all those sorts of things. So it is very specific. One thing I would say is depending on what level you're at, make sure it's appropriate age-wise.
Yeah, good point, yeah.
When you're talking about throwing weights around, I know Tim's worked with a side at a pretty delicate age this year with rugby league, that 13s, 14s. If you're at that age, you don't really want to be encouraging them to be doing too many sorts of weights. One thing that will never go out of fashion, whether you're in under whatever through to open age, is core work,
sit-ups.
Push-ups, sit-ups, and core work. It's great. It's great for everyone. And stretching, flexibility. Lee will tell you right now, there are so many more NRL teams these days. They're getting more into the flexibility of their players, injury prevention, with all their gym sessions. So, and you can do that at absolutely any age. You can teach someone how to stretch properly and how to be a bit more limber. So I'd recommend throwing in a session like that each week as well, depending on your schedule.
The golden, most basic rule of thumb is get some kilometres in your legs of your players when you first get them, and then gradually, so the quantity of what you do gets reduced gradually after time. So, kilometres in your legs is quantity, and then the quantity of what you do gets reduced, and therefore the intensity of it lifts. So, for example, if you run for 4,000 metres, that, as you know, I wouldn't get my players to do that, but if you did, you'd have to pace yourself to get through it. So your intensity of doing it wouldn't be very high. Or if you went really hard at the start, you'd tire out, so your intensity would really go down because you're blowing out of every orifice that you've got available to you, which is like you used to be, Taylor, after 3 minutes. Now, the opposite of that is doing something for a few seconds and doing it really fast and powerful. And that's basically what you've got to balance in your periodization, isn't it, boys? Tim, what's your sort of experience doing all this?
Yeah, especially with your age group. I'm interested to see how you ran those sessions with those lads, actually.
We just flogged them.
Yeah, basically. But I'd put condition, like doing conditioning, getting them to putting the cage in their legs and trying to get them playing games and working on their core. Their core, I'm a real big, like doing burpees, push-ups, sit-ups, and that sort of stuff. I really drill that into my players.
James does that all the time just for himself on the bus.
And then towards the end of your pre-season, getting more into your S&Q, your speed and agility, and getting the ball in their hands, so that the start of the season, you've got a bit of an idea of where your players are at to develop what plan you're going to go for throughout the season.
Well, the other thing I do is the ball is in the hands from the first session. That's the other thing. So,
yes,
bring him out. I know why buses are late now. All the drivers are just doing podcasts when they should be driving the bus.
I'm setting a trend. I'm a trendsetter with that one, I think.
How nice was the chippy?
Oh, it was. Yeah, it was.
Did you go to your chippy? You went to
your
chippy.
And you know, like when you think, it's not going to be as good as it was the first day. It was probably better.
It was. It was really, yeah.
And the last time I went, I was a bit inebriated because I'd done the coaching seminar. It was my last day of work, so I decided to have a few pints of bodies. So, of course, it tasted good. This time I was sober as a judge, and it still tasted good.
It did. It did. It was top notch. So yeah, enjoyed it. But it was good.
James did his research. We found it again. I said, I've been planning this trip from Australia, love. To the
that was the job, wasn't it? I remembered where it was though, Lee, because I hadn't had the bodies, of course, when we went there first.
Well, the other thing is your job is just driving around, so you got to memorise these things anyway.
Well, yes, but I didn't have the research worked.
Were you a bus driver before GPS days?
Well, I've been bus driving for 6 years, so no, not really.
You know what cracks me up before GPS, right? Sat nav. We used to have to get a big book out and start looking through it, like the A to Z in England or the street directory.
No, that's not.
People say don't use your phone. Well, we used to have a big book. So like the street directory in
on the steering wheel as you're driving.
100%, yeah. I mean, not me, obviously, officer, but people I saw. You'd be there on the steering wheel going, whoa.
Mate, even better. Yeah. Even better, you'd get around the place. You knew you were close because you were there on the map, but you weren't quite sure and you couldn't see it. So you'd be in the side of the car and you'd pull over and your dad would be, ask this bloke.
Yep.
I'm not asking him. I'm not asking this random bloke. And he'd be like, get down. And then he'd wind it down. Oi, mate, we're looking for the Catholic club. Can you tell us where it is?
Yeah, mate, just go down there a little bit.
Down here to the left and off you go. The amount of times someone asked me and I gave them directions and they said, is that how you go? I said, I've got no idea.
And the worst thing is the A to Z. People used to lie anyway all the time, or they tell you big elongated instructions. You're like, I've forgotten after the first two. Exactly. The other thing with the old street directories or A to Z or whatever you want to call it, the amount of times when you're there and you're following at your steering wheel, you're doing your steering wheel and you're following it in your book. I'll go back so people who are watching can see. I've got a book here now and I'm following it and I'm watching it. And it's page 22, and then I'm going down Strawberry Lane and I turn around and I have to find page 149. So you're there, not only are you driving and reading, but you've got to skip about 100 pages, and that's quite hard
to go to the next suburb.
Oh, you never ever got in trouble for that.
And gentlemen, I'm going to have to go. I'm afraid I know I've been very quiet on this podcast, but I'll have to go back to my work.
Just come back next week for the James Varley podcast. I've dominated this one because I'm angry.
No, it's been good. It's been good, but it's great to listen to and great just for me to keep quiet for once and listen.
I'm sick of hearing you anyway the last 2 weeks.
Well, I've been quiet, yeah. Anyway, I'll be with you guys hopefully next week. So
take care.
No worries, mate. Take care.
See you, mate.
Yeah, the old book. How dodgy was it? I remember being in Castleford. It's a shame James has gone. I was looking for it. It was for me English students trial, and we pulled over. We didn't have a Scooby where Lock Lane was. And we pulled over, and this fella goes, "Oh, laddie, you have to go turn over Water Bridge, turn over there." And it's from the same country as me. I didn't have a Scooby, what he said. And it's from an hour away. Lad, you have to, I thought turn over Water Bridge, turn read.
Jeez. You Poms do it different. You Poms just do it. But you know what? I the bloke who made the street directory, what was his go? Like he'd be the next page and he'd just go, I'll screw with everyone. I'll put it 100 pages away.
The other thing too, the street directory in Australia, in Sydney, basically was A4 size. The A to Z is a bit smaller. Even that makes a bit more sense than having like a big encyclopedia.
Yeah.
When you're driving.
But you could get them in different sizes. You could get the Refidex and all that sort of stuff in like A3.
Well, then you'd have to change the page more.
Yeah.
And you guys know that's a trend now to travel without a GPS and just use a physical map. You know, like people are doing it.
Because you like camping, mate. That was a trend. That was a trend 3,000 years ago before houses were built.
Yeah,
it wasn't even called camping back then.
No, it was called living.
It was just living.
It used to be a trend where you tie notes to pigeons and just hope.
Just getting back to that, Refidex and that. When I was in the Navy, we pulled over a Indonesian fishing vessel, and they had every street in Australia renamed in Philippines.
Wow.
And they are our closest neighbour.
There you go.
Yeah,
because we were actually looking up where we grew up and everything. Going, no, that's not even close to what the translation is.
Yeah.
You know, in Christchurch, right? I went to Christchurch not long after the earthquakes in 2011, and I went on a cruise, so we had to go to a port that was about 50 kilometres outside of Christchurch. Anyway, I'm paraphrasing what the guy said here, but basically the tour guide said that back in the day when we were working out which part of the world we were all going to conquer, and we were it was the French, the British, and the Spanish or something trying to steal everybody's land. The French arrived at this part of Christchurch and went, oh, there'll be nobody come here for a while. So they just didn't even put a flag down. And then somebody else came and took it over. I think it was a British or a Spanish or whatever. I can't remember. So there's this little area right near Christchurch where they had a gentleman's agreement, because I don't know if there was great equality in things back then, like voyaging. Yeah. And there's a load of streets, a little town that everything's named in French.
Really?
So Rue de la Kumar, Rue de la Rugby League Podcast, whatever. You know what I mean? Everything. The bakery is called La Patisserie, and it's a little So
wow.
Yeah.
The French,
and it's quite a significant area. Like it's not just like two streets. Like it's
the French probably put a flag down, but it was probably a white flag.
No, well, they probably put a flag down. They probably put a flag down if it was the British and they come from where I'm from up north. They probably got the flag and said they could shove that up their ass and just threw it in the sea or something, and then just put their own flag down. But So there was So that was a nice little caveat that I thought I'd throw into the closing stages, the twilight of this episode.
Yes, it is the twilight of the episode.
People must think I'm bipolar. I started off ranting and now I'm telling stories about.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is you're smiling and happy. It's 360. Have you got a lot off your chest today, Lee?
I have actually. Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good to see. Yeah. It's good to hear.
Oh, but I am genuinely passionate about it. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, that's what happens. You're from that part of the world, mate. It's what you grew up with, and
yes, say a little Llewellyn.
So tell us about some of the. You went to a few World Cup games. You had a few stars.
I went to one. But I got spotted a few times.
Yeah,
it's starting to happen a bit now. So thank you to everybody in England though who reached out, and I even went to the Kangaroos Hotel to see Teddy and bumped into Jake Trebojevic, who I used to coach, and blah blah blah. So we had a great catch up, a great laugh. But a couple of the Kangaroo staff were like, "Oh, you're that fella off Facebook." I said, Teddy, if you need any help with social media, let me know.
Yeah, get Teddy on here, mate.
Oh, he's hard work, Teddy, like that.
He's hard work.
Not in a bad way, like not. He's just Teddy's Teddy, mate. He's just, he's not. Have you not noticed with Teddy that he's very much his own man, but he's not arrogant. Like he's just, and he was like this at school. He just does his own thing. He doesn't do what everybody else does just because everyone else does it. Like he's just a very understated person. I always tell the story, and I think this sums him up. When we won the grand final in 2010. His parents had come, and I said to his parents, John and Rosie, let him come on the bus and celebrate with all the boys, because most of the boys were boarders. He said, nah, he's not really like that. He'll be happy. Do you know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that, is there? Some people will go, oh, that's arrogance or whatever. Look at who does Teddy think he is. It isn't, though. It's just the way he is. So, like, some players love jumping on every single podcast and look what doing that did for the cheese. But and Ronaldo Mulatalo does it, jumps on everything. But Teddy's just not like that. Like he's just. I've had him on before, and I'm sure I'll get him on again.
Yeah,
because he trusts me, and he knows I'm not going to
ask him some weird question halfway through. A podcast.
If I interviewed him with you, I'd think that's a different kettle of fish.
Oh yeah, he wouldn't go near a camera with me around. No. Teddy.
No. But that's just So
it's been a while since I've seen him. I've been up here for a long time. But,
he's doing well. Proud of him as I know you are. So
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he's the best player in the world at the moment in my eyes.
Yep.
Apart from
Cleary goes close.
Me.
Apart from you.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. We'll finish on this. Did anyone here see the? Everyone knows Denon Kemp from Bloke in a Bar. Did anyone see his preseason tips?
Yeah, that was awesome. I'm going to share it right now.
That's one of the funniest and most accurate tips you'll ever see. Did you see it, Tim?
No, I didn't.
Mate, if you don't,
are you going to read it out? Do you want me to read it out?
I'll read some out.
Is there any naughty words in it?
There is a few naughty words. I'm just looking at it now.
Share it then.
So I'll just share a couple of them. Tip number 2: make sure you get on top of the chafe before it's too bad. Don't wait till it looks like you have an STI and you are walking like a cowboy before you do something. Find a partner for wrestling that is a man of culture and knows what a gentleman's agreement is.
Love it.
Oh,
I can't share it. It must have gone off his story.
yeah. It's
Yeah,
really
keep going. Read out the things you can read to a family audience, please.
Vaseline and pawpaw cream are your friend. Embrace them. Use them.
Yes.
Potentially even invest in some.
Yes. Well said.
Yeah, there's some very, very good ones. I'm trying to go through the ones that you can. Doesn't matter how tired you are, stretch. Your Gary Jack is going to be in licorice all sorts by week 2.
I think that's the back, isn't it?
Yeah. Young fellas, you may not know what ITBs are. You will find out after week 2. Roll the ITBs out. Oh, the old Susan Boyle is always roaming around to preseason. Wash yourself. Some of you blokes mustn't have soap and running water.
Who do you think is going to be the halves for Australia?
Nathan Cleary, Camp Munster.
Yeah, it'd be Cleary and Munster. Yeah. Meninga said so this afternoon.
Munster's been named on the bench. Cleary to start. Sorry.
You got to remember. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, DCE to start and Cleary on the bench.
No, I've read the opposite today.
I've read the opposite today too. Meninga come out and said that Cleary's going to be the half.
Yep.
So what are you on about, Tim?
I saw Tim's team list too. I saw another team list that said that
Tim's reading the team list from when they played Lebanon in 2017.
I think that the time's now. Meninga's got to pull Cleary aside, say it's your team, mate.
The other thing, you'd probably give somebody a game anyway in this one because they're going to beat Lebanon, aren't they?
Never know.
You'd hope so, Lee.
Says the Fijian.
The voice of the underdogs.
Yes. You never know.
Oh, the old Lebanese side.
Predictions before we go. Let's go. TB.
Well, Lebanon are going to get
pounded
by the
New Zealand versus Fiji. New Zealand.
Well,
I'm very
Fiji
sorry.
beat them last World Cup in the finals.
Raneel, I'm very sorry, but I actually
what was that on the computer?
Yeah, I really like New Zealand, and I can't wait to watch them play Australia.
England versus PNG. England. Samoa versus Tonga.
Close.
Samoa versus Tonga will be close.
Yeah.
Very close.
But Tonga have gone about things better since day one than Samoa. So
yeah, I think so too. I think
Tonga are building nicely.
I picked Tonga, but I would not be surprised.
So then it'll be Tonga versus England.
Tonga. Mate, good chance if Tonga pull it together, they make a World Cup final.
Ooh.
Raneel?
Yep.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I'd like that.
I'm not sure what you like. I asked for your prediction.
Jeez, you get upset.
Yeah.
Hi,
Raneel, what do you like? So semi-final England versus Tonga. If assuming Tonga beats Samoa, England.
Yeah.
Tim?
This could be anything.
South.
Tim picked. Yeah.
South Sydney will win this.
Tim's picked Souths in the year 2040 to win the comp.
Yeah.
Latrell Mitchell still playing.
I've got Australia, New Zealand, England, and Tonga. But I think the England PNG game.
Who's winning the England-Tonga game?
Tonga.
I reckon England. So Tonga win that, don't they?
Tonga.
Or is it equal? It's equal, isn't it? So Australia, New Zealand, who wins that?
I cannot wait to watch that game of football.
It's going to be tight.
I think New Zealand have a better forward pack. I think New Zealand have a better forward pack, and they have some good strike out wide too. I think it's going to be a very close game of football.
And New Zealand a bit weaker in the halves.
They are weaker in the halves, but I mean, mate, Dylan Brown played a good season of football.
Mm-hmm.
Jerome Hughes is no slouch.
Mm-hmm. Yes, totally. Yeah.
Cleary and Munster are top 5 in the game. So those two together. So they've got in my opinion 1, 2, and probably 3 in their spine of the best players in the world right now. They've got 1, 2, and 3. So yes, they do have a far superior spine, but you know what? Football can be funny if you're playing behind a really good forward pack, Lee.
Yes.
And I think...
Will Jerome Hughes be fit?
Oh. Yeah, you're asking a question. I can't answer.
His leg's been playing up.
Yeah.
I like Jerome Hughes a lot, but he's not Stacey Jones or Benji Marshall.
No, I agree. But I think I think Dylan Brown and Jerome Hughes are both running halves. And I think if you get a forward pack for New Zealand that runs, you got Brandon Smith that gets his running game going. Would you be surprised to see a very close game? They're going to make him fight tooth and nail for him. I think New Zealand will be very strong through the middle of the park. Joey Manu just cutting loose in the middle of the field.
You might be right.
I still think Australia win, but stranger things have happened.
Yeah. I think you're right. It's a great game. It's actually quite close. Like it's
the way they play and match up against each other will be interesting. Australia will be trying to use their, the Latrell Mitchells of the tournament. Josh Adokar's had a great tournament so far.
Yeah.
They'll be trying to spread it wide to their strike. And really Nathan Cleary will be great. You know what I mean? They're just really strong there. But New Zealand, if they play the right style of football, they can really trouble the Australians.
Don't disagree. And then who's winning the final?
Oh, it's the winner of Australia and New Zealand. I don't see England as being able to close that gap.
Okay.
And part of that is my head thinking, and the other part of that is just wanting to see you get upset.
I won't get upset. If Tonga beat England by 2, I'll be praising the growth of the international game.
Right.
If Tonga beat England by 42, or Samoa beat England by 4, if Samoa play England, if Samoa get through, it'd be a very different game. Very different game.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Because you win a game of football by 2, you can lose it by 2. Lose it by 2, you can win it by 2. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not the end of the world. So I'm really impressed by how England are going about things. I don't think I'm stopping short of saying they can win it, but I think they're doing the best with what they've got. I really do.
If New Zealand knock off Australia, can England beat New Zealand?
Yes. Australia to an Englishman is like trying to date Jennifer Lopez. Like,
I could have done it in my prime.
Mate, I just told her I'm doing the Aim Higher tour. Leave me alone. So we hold it on a pedestal. It's an English mentality I'm trying to talk to you. New Zealand doesn't have that same aura.
Yeah.
So even if New Zealand are a better team, England will go in thinking 50-50.
Yeah.
They'll always there's 50 years worth of doubts against Australia. England will be better playing them in a semi-final or something. Honestly, it's
right.
Yeah.
And if England probably got to the final against Australia, they'd probably breathe a sigh of relief. And then whatever happened there happens because it's Australia and no one's going to care,
I do truly think England are in the best hands. I really do. If it's not Wayne Bennett, I wanted it to be Sean Wayne. And Sean's coaching them exactly how I thought he'd coach them in terms of, I love the way he speaks about them and to them and everything else. And so I can't criticise England, and I haven't. Sorry, Tim, what were you going to say?
How do you think England's going to go up against the hard-hitting PNG boys? Are they going to be carrying injuries into whoever they play in Tonga or Samoa? Because England haven't really come up against a really hard-hitting team yet in their forward packs. And
you tell Junior Paulo was not hard-hitting.
But in that first game, there was Samoa.
Yeah, they ran right through them. Yeah, and I do believe what you're saying that the PNG boys would play.
They're going to play hard football.
They seem to play with a bit of extra passion that I don't think it's shared by anyone else in the tournament, including the Australians.
I don't think Papua New Guinea will get near England.
I don't think.
If Papua New Guinea do knock England over, get ready for the post next week.
I don't think Papua New Guinea beat England. I think Papua New Guinea brutalised them in defence. I think you're right there, Tim, where Justin Olam turns himself into a human missile and comes outside in on about 5 different people. That happens. Steve Maddai-esque. And you're right. Will that have an effect on their next game against another big Islander team? Possibly, for sure. But I mean, they're at the World Cup. Every expense would be put onto their recovery and all those sorts of things. I mean, Lee would be able to attest to that. But look, fellas, I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Episode 22 in the bag.
Yeah, that was a good one, I think.
Absolutely. We're nearing on that, what's it, hour and a half sort of period now, isn't it?
Yeah, not far off. I'll just speed it up a bit. In a minute.
Yeah. Okay. Do you still need to eat dinner, Lee, or are you done? You're good?
No, I'm all right.
You're all right? Okay. All right. Raneel, any final thoughts about the Fijians before they get eliminated this weekend?
Just get ready for them to lift the trophy, that's all.
What has there been a play tournament brought in?
if Fiji get through to the semis, if they get through to the top, let's say if they get through to the top 4,
Raneel can host the podcast next week.
If they get through, if they get through the top 4, can we get you full kit doing the song at the top of it? And then
only if you lads join me.
And then we'll record it, Lee, and then that can be the opening clip for Rugby League Coach podcast from now on in.
Yeah.
You know, some people have entrance music. That can be our music that we come to. I think that's fair.
That's fair.
Tim, any more final thoughts before we wrap up for the week?
No, I reckon it's going to be a good weekend of footy.
Good weekend of footy to be had.
No, here's a thought. That's what he just said. He said, have you got any final thoughts? He said no and then gave a thought.
Gave a thought, yeah. Lee, I'd ask for your thoughts, but I'm afraid.
Yes, I've got a thought.
I've
just contradicted himself.
I've emptied that brain.
It's like Queenslanders. Yeah, nah.
I love saying that.
I
love saying that. Yeah. Are you going to the game of the week? Oh no, yeah, I'll get there.
Yeah.
The thing is that there's some local footy on with the suicide prevention guys, the All Stars. I think they're playing on Saturday too.
I believe there's suicide prevention cup going on this weekend, and then next weekend is the Velocity All Stars.
Yeah,
commentated by one yours truly, Taylor Brown.
Oh, awesome!
So
nice,
yeah,
lovely.
There's a bit going on. Anyway, fellas, let's wrap it up there. Rugby League Coach Podcast, episode 22 in the bag. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
See ya.
Let me stop this recording.